The Battle of the Minis. The Super Nintendo Mini versus the Amiga 500 Mini. We're going to be comparing these and I'm going to be telling you which one is better and why. We're going to take a look at games, peripherals, interface and more.
That's right. The Amiga Mini versus the Super Nintendo, the SNES being my favourite console of all time. But clearly, if you've been watching my content, you'll know that the Amiga Mini has also taken my little mind and my heart by absolute storm. That's why I wanted to deliver a video that nobody asked for.
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
Starting with the Super Nintendo Mini, off the bat it looks absolutely stunning with a scrolling background of the Super Famicom box art. We have a little options menu across the top where we're able to access different filters, different frames, and I think the frames are a really nice addition to accompany the 4:3 aspect ratio. I really like the simplicity here. Everything is super easy to use, and as you can see, I use the simplest looking filter, which has kind of a colour shift as you're progressing through your games. We have additional settings here, basic stuff as well as languages. Obviously, we're going to be taking a look at the A500 Mini as well. Random legal notices and of course a QR code for your manuals. Now you can arrange your carousel as you wish. Here is the default setting whereby everything is in alphabetical order, and I want to point out that we're not using any hacks here. These are just the carousels in their base states. Now if you don't want alphabetical order, you can filter by times played, 2-player games, etc, etc. We have release date here as well. It's quite a versatile carousel overall on the Super Nintendo Mini. The Amiga 500 Mini is a much more basic carousel in terms of its colour palette, but definitely packs a similar punch. We are rolling the games from left to right in alphabetical order. You can see if you need a mouse, if it's 1-player, 2-player, gamepad, you can rate them, you can favourite them, and of course you can sort them as you can on the Super Nintendo Mini as well. So the only thing lacking here, I would say, is the colour palette, but it's still a really effective carousel overall. Into the display options, we have fixed size, moderate zoom and screen fit. Unfortunately, there's no option to have any niceties around the 4:3 aspect ratio as we have on the Super Nintendo Mini, but ultimately it depends on what your preferences are. We have the horrible black border instead, but maybe that will be fixed in a future firmware update. Again, we've got all the options in here. It's quite basic and it's easy to use, but I think we need to see this side by side. So here we go. The carousels, as you can see, the Super Nintendo definitely pops out for me, but ultimately again it depends if you want the cleaner look of the A500 Mini. I'll tell you which one I prefer as we progress through this episode. And just for clarity, here are the display options side by side as well.
So the Super Nintendo Mini carousel and in-game borders really wins the kind of interface war for me versus the Amiga 500 Mini, but that's only one test. We're going to dive into the second one now.
Controllers. The Super Nintendo is unfortunately not USB, making it very difficult to utilise third-party controllers, whereas the glorious A500 Mini has the generic USB style fit for the mouse as well as the gamepad. The mouse and the gamepad themselves have, I think it's well over 1.5 meters worth of length, making it very easy to sit quite far away should you so desire to have a little bit of couch co-op whilst utilising the gamepads. Again, you can use lots of different third-party controllers, including a PS4 controller. That that's right, it actually works on the A500 Mini. I'll link a video to my testing of this if you want to check it out in a little bit more depth, but you can see it here scrolling through the carousel. Make sure you obviously utilise your USB cable, simply plug it into the A500 Mini and away you go. Also, third-party keyboards, it's a win-win.
The Amiga 500 Mini definitely oozes more charms in terms of peripherals. I mean, after all, I got a PlayStation 4 controller working on my Amiga 500 Mini. You wouldn't be able to do that on the Super Nintendo Mini because the controller ports they're just not USB. It's impossible to find another controller that would mimic something like that, whereas USB 2 and 3 ports are universal, which does give the Amiga 500 Mini an edge in terms of its peripherals. So it's one apiece so far. So in terms of the games then, my heart is definitely leaning more towards the Amiga 500 Mini, believe it or not, because I feel that for me, there's way more of a variety. And not to mention that I'm so used to playing all of the Super Nintendo games that were on the Super Nintendo Mini, you kind of don't have that element of surprise. There were lots of Amiga 500 and 600 and whatever, 1200 games that I've been playing that I've completely forgot about, and they're in the ones that I've completely discovered today.
Hands up in the comments if that little intro gave you some goosebumps. And maybe if it didn't, maybe a little bit of Contra 3 or Super Pro Protector as it's known here in PAL regions will give you some nice, lovely goosebumps for your arms, because the nostalgia is strong with the Super Nintendo game lineup. There are 20 in total compared to the Amiga 500 Mini's 25, and I am extremely familiar, aside from Star Fox 2 perhaps, with all of the games on the Super Nintendo Mini. If side-scrolling shoot-em-ups aren't your thing, then perhaps racing games are. F-Zero was a launch title on the Super Nintendo and made great use of Mode 7, giving a 3D effect while the game shifts from left to right, as you can see here. Twisting and turning throughout the tracks really does give it that nice 3D feel. And let's not forget the power of the soundtrack on F-Zero. It's absolutely phenomenal. The SNES Mini also does a great job at delivering games that are perhaps not as affordable, such as Mega Man X, for example. And let's not forget Star Fox 2, the unreleased game kind of officially getting a release on the SNES Mini. But boy, do I miss not having the box and the manual. But hey ho, the SNES Mini's games they're absolutely brilliant, absolutely solid lineup. Arguably though, the Super Nintendo Mini's game library is so good that perhaps it's a little bit too familiar. I for one have played Super Mario World so many times, and it's up there in one of my favourite video games of all time. But I do know the levels fairly well and I know what to expect, so it's not as good of an experience, you say, as playing something that you've not played for 30 years. One final thing about the games is this awesome rewind feature. Maybe you get a really good kill or a really good win on F-Zero, for example. You're able to watch the gameplay back, and I think that's a super cool feature. Now over to the Amiga 500 Mini. We're going to demo a couple of games, well actually more than a couple of games, starting with Chaos Engine. Now this is a great game. This is an isometric shooter. You can play 2-player, but you can also run through as 2-player but using the computer as well, which is very, very handy. Of course, Chaos Engine isn't exclusive to the Amiga. You can play it on the Super Nintendo, ironically, but it is one of the pre-built games so it's one of 25 on the A500 Mini, and it runs really, really nicely. Now we've already talked about the A500 Mini and its versatility with its peripherals, and the good thing is you can dive into a point and click adventure like Simon the Sorcerer with your handy tank mouse. So you physically get the feel of the nostalgia from the mouse. The mouse was a big thing back in the day, and it's so iconic for the Amiga brand that being able to use it now on the A500 Mini feels remarkable. Zool is another Amiga game that really helped to solidify the home computer's reputation back in the day. And again, it's not exclusive to the Amiga, but it's definitely one of the prominent titles. If you look at a top 10 list anywhere on the internet, Zool will more than likely be on there, and thankfully they included it in the native library for the A500 Mini. They also included the classic Speedball 2. This again, it's a very challenging game, but very rewarding once you've mastered it. And of course, it's great with 2-player. And I think for me, out of all of the games on the SNES Mini and on the A500 Mini, I feel that you're getting better couch co-op experiences on the A500 Mini, and especially because I, for one, am less familiar with these games. I've played them, don't get me wrong, but not as much as Super Mario World, not as much as F-Zero, not as much as Street Fighter 2 Turbo. The list really goes on. Ask yourself this: how familiar are you with Starwing or Star Fox, for example? Probably very familiar, whereas you dive into the A500 Mini library and the nostalgia bells just start to ring in a very different kind of way.
So I think in terms of its game package, for its versatility alone, the Amiga 500 Mini takes it for me personally over the Super Nintendo, putting us at 2-1. So overall, the Amiga 500 Mini definitely takes it for me, and that might surprise a lot of you because I harp on about my collection, my huge collection, in particular my Super Nintendo stuff which is behind me, all of the time. The Super Nintendo is definitely my favourite console. I clearly love this gorgeous machine. It was my first console back as a little girl, but the Amiga has really rekindled my love for the British video game scene, and related to be delivering lots more Amiga content to you guys. So I will leave every Amiga episode that I've ever done in the pinned comments of this episode for you to find whatever you want. Very easy. It'll also be in the description. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little breakdown and deep dive into the two most prominent minis on my radar. Please leave a like, and it would really help me out if you could subscribe and enjoy more content. But for now, I'll leave it there. My name is Gemma. Take care. See you soon. I need a few seconds of your time to tell you about channel memberships. If you guys want to become a channel member, click join from the main page or the second link in the description. There are 3 tiers, all with different perks for you if you want to become a team member. Thanks for your time. Let's continue with the video.